Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings.
It's a great thing. It's a great freedom to have when you're not tied down to a specific office or whatnot. You know, it's just you got to take advantage of that stuff when it presents itself.
All right, we're back, and today we are talking with Derek Stenning, a fellow Canadian. Glad to have some Canadians represented on here. And to start off, Derek, why don't you give us a 1-minute overview of what you do? I've got a really cool question. You had a really cool experience that I want to ask you about because I'm a traveler as well. I'll drop a hint. But yeah, let's start with a 1-minute overview.
Well, I'm a concept artist and illustrator based out of Victoria, BC in Canada. And I've been working in games for probably 15 years now, doing concept art. In more last couple of years, I kind of branched out and doing more of the freelance thing, working for various clients. But my passion is drawing and painting, and I like doing that across the whole spectrum of stuff: games, illustration, books, graphics for whatever. Do some of my own art on the side with some gallery stuff and some model kits and that kind of thing. So just being creative and doing what I love to do.
Perfect. Well, actually, before we get into the thing that I really want to ask you, we've been doing quite a few episodes lately on freelancing, and you have seem to have a really good setup going where you have regular clients, but is that realistic from your experience and talking with other artists, having, you have your regular clients, or are you more the exception to the rule? Because I know there's a lot of fear that people have that, they're going to have to work so hard to find all these new clients. But in reality, I feel like your situation is not that uncommon, that once you do a good job for somebody, they want to keep you. They want to almost hide you from other people because you do such good work.
Yeah, I think you're right with that, Mitch, because once it's certainly starting out, it's hard to build out a network of clients. My experience is that I worked in the studio environment for many, many years and worked with a lot of different people. So once I kind of broke off and started doing my own thing, I had a lot of people that I knew. And what you were saying is, I went from working in the studio to freelancing, but the people I still worked with or used to work with in the studio still wanted me to work for them. So those kind of became my regular clients. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I can see what you're saying. Like if you're starting out, it's kind of hard to build up that client base. But, again, in today's age with, online portfolios and all of that stuff, I think it's easier to get noticed and to build out that network. But yeah, in my case, it was working with a lot of people that I already knew. So, but yeah, I still get work for or do jobs for people I don't know. So it kind of works both ways, I think.
Cool. And what was if you can go back to when you made the switch to freelance, what was the mindset shift that sort of led you down that path and got you out of the studio? Was there something big that happened, or is there a lot of little things? Do you remember?
For me, it was more just situational. I had worked in Vancouver at various game studios for years, and then I took a job over in Victoria, BC, which is just across the water on Vancouver Island from Vancouver. It's a much smaller city. It doesn't have the same infrastructure or just the industry. Vancouver has got tons of game studios, animation studios, post-production studios. There's just a lot going on there. And Victoria doesn't. But the reason I moved to Victoria was Microsoft was starting a studio here. And some friends of mine were kind of headhunted by Microsoft to start that studio. And they asked if I wanted to go with them. And I said, sure, because, Victoria is a nice place. I actually grew up in Victoria. So coming back to be closer to old friends and family and that kind of thing. And I got a couple kids. It's a nice place to raise a family. So I came over here. But the Microsoft thing, it didn't really work out. It was only lasted a couple of years. We did a lot of cool stuff while we were there, but it just didn't pan out. So when that studio closed down, I wanted to stay in Victoria, So at that point, it was like, well, because there isn't a big scene here, I had to go freelance and just work that way. And riding on to your previous question, it was about at that same time that, studios I worked with in Vancouver were also looking for help. So the timing was kind of perfect. So I started working for them and picked up a few other clients soon afterwards, including something here in Victoria, because Victoria does have a small but growing video game scene. So there is some cool stuff happening here as well. So I kind of tapped into that as well.
That makes so much sense. Now, the thing that I really wanted to ask you about, and we were talking about this, we touched on it before we hit record, was that last year you spent time out of Canada, but you were still freelancing. And this is one of the amazing things that, of course, we all know it, but to actually live it, because it's one thing to say like, yeah, I can work from a coffee shop or I can take my work with me. It's a whole other thing to go with your family and go abroad.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of the great things where when you're freelancing or when you're mobile is that, you can work anywhere. And as soon as I made that shift, my wife and I had started talking about, well, this is a great opportunity. If we're not tied to one place, let's, go somewhere and spend some time living elsewhere just for the experience, give our children that experience of experiencing different cultures and whatnot. So last year we moved to France and lived in the Loire Valley in a small town called Loches, about 2 hours southwest of Paris. And my kids are in French immersion here in Canada, so, they had a leg up, but they went to school there and learned French. Their French is amazing now. And we based out of France, and then we just kind of traveled around. We went to tons of different countries all over Western Europe. And and the work was the same. I kept the same clients that I had, just all here in North America, and worked from there, and it's just it's a great thing. It's a great freedom to have when you're not tied down to a specific office or whatnot. It's just you got to take advantage of that stuff when it presents itself.
Yeah, definitely. And time seems to go by so fast that if you don't actually take advantage of it, it's easy for life to just keep trucking along, and you get to a point where all of a sudden you can't, or it becomes more and more difficult because of a sick parent, or there's all kinds of things that could happen that make you want to be closer to home. And I think it's so cool. I just have this stupid grin on my face thinking about all the adventures you guys must have had last summer.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was great. I mean, the certainly hauling your gear around. Like I got a Cintiq and an iMac and all that stuff. So, I had these giant mixer cases that I had to carry around. So certainly traveling and doing train rides with all this gear and all that stuff, that was a little stressful, but the payoffs were awesome. It was just seeing the kids, experiencing all this stuff and going to all these different places, and Europe's just so fantastic for that, where within a short train ride or a short flight, you're in a different country with a different culture, different language, different cuisine, different everything. It's just something that it's hard to experience over here in North America, like our Canada and United States. I mean, they're wonderful spots and wonderful places, but it's so huge, right? And you don't get that same cultural differences that you do over in Europe, and the history is, just amazing.
Yeah, that was my feeling too, that having been in Europe as a kid, it's one thing, but when you go back as an adult, it's a whole different ball game, and just like everything, you realize all these differences. It's such a good experience. Who I'd like to speak to on this podcast is the person who's in that studio life, and they're they hear this and it's like, well, I couldn't do that. I feel like it's a lot easier than, you can, of course, come up with all these excuses of the reasons why you couldn't do something like this. And it literally is life-changing. So I like to try and push people outside of their comfort zone. And doing it with a family is even, adds probably like 10 times the logistics and difficulty of all this. But what was it like for you guys, the actual, because I know it's not just as easy as buying a plane ticket, although maybe it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of planning involved. I have to admit, my wife handled probably 99% of the logistics. Our kind of thing was she'll plan it and take care of it, and I'll just pay for it. So it was like, I worked my ass off for a couple of years so we could just bank a whole bunch of money, and then so I was busy doing that while she did all the logistics. But it was crazy. I mean, there was just visas and obviously stuff with the kids, working out schooling and everything for the children, and once we were there, just all the travel plans and flights, trains, where you're going to stay, and doing it with kids is probably, it's like, more complex and harder than doing it by yourself or just as a couple. But as with kids, with everything, they just make everything more fun, in my opinion, so again, having the experiences and doing it ourselves was great, but also watching your children have those experiences was as or more rewarding. So more work, but in my opinion, more benefit, and more enjoyment of it, having them along for the ride.
And then while you were there, what was your work schedule like? Did you also, you said you did a lot of work before, did you kind of work ahead so that your schedule was less intense, or was it pretty much business as usual and the family did family things and you did your work time, and then at nights you were all spending time together?
Basically, yeah. I mean, we just kind of transported our life over there. I mean, I was still working, so it was, it was largely the same. I wasn't working as much. We traveled a lot, and so there was a lot of time spent traveling and on the road and going places. So I certainly pared back my work schedule. I mean, I still had, my two main big clients. I was still working for them the whole time, but I wasn't doing a lot of personal work at that time. It was certainly less work going on, just so we could do more stuff together and travel more.
Oh, that's so cool. And any advice before we move on to talk about more quote unquote art stuff? Any advice that you would give to somebody who feels inspired just hearing this? To kind of push them over the edge, because I feel like it's a life-changing experience to do something like this, and I would love to hear people going on an adventure.
Yeah, I think. I mean, my only advice would be just, if you have the means, do it. Take the plunge and do it. The one thing I didn't do over there, which I think probably would have made the experience even richer, is that I wasn't working over there. I was working for clients in North America, but I wasn't working for any French studios or any other studios. I didn't have a visa to do it, but I think that would have made it more rewarding and would have allowed for more immersion for me into the culture, if I had actually done some professional work or worked over there. I got a request while I was there to go to some school to help judge students' portfolios and stuff, but I didn't do it just because it conflicted with some travel we were doing. But I didn't. I think it would be great to go over and work in a different country. I did it years ago. Years and years ago, I went and worked in Reykjavik in Iceland at a game studio there, and that was a great experience. So I kind of wish I did that over in France, but we had other priorities. But yeah, my main advice would be, if someone is thinking about doing that, would just be to go ahead and do it. It's great experience.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit, and I would like to talk a little bit about the book you did for Design Studio Press, because it's, I feel like it's an achievement, something that not a lot of people do. Design Studio Press, if you're listening and you haven't heard of, go and look them up. They have a bunch of amazing books, and I believe some are technique books and some are just art books, correct?
Yeah, they some of them are straight up art books. I think with a lot of their books, they like to position them as part educational as well, just because they're tied so closely to Art Center down there. But yeah, they do have both. There's some straight up art books and some that are more, educational tutorial stuff. Scott Robertson, the guy that runs it, I mean, he's got a lot of great educational books. I mean, he's an amazing artist. And then they usually like to slant all their stuff. Like my book has a little section in it where I take a piece from start to finish, from sketch to full paint. And I've seen that in some of the other books, like Sparth has done a few books with them, and he has progression images in his book as well. So yeah, they like to give things that kind of a window into the production for interest and for educational purposes.
And so I'm curious about, how do you get scouted, or what is the process for doing this? Did you have an idea and then you went to Design Studio Press? Did they come to you? Did you meet at a conference and just having a coffee and start a conversation?
I mean, I think with Scott, I think all those approaches probably happen. Mine was a little different. The book encompasses a series of personal pieces I did, that I did throughout the course of several years, just as kind of a way to blow off steam and get back to doing some of my own art after working on other people's stuff for so long. And so, I started doing that and doing the pieces, and it started getting some exposure. I posted some of it online and did some art shows and a few other things. And somehow Scott came across it and he liked it enough. So he contacted me and asked if I wanted to do a book with the work. And that was maybe, I don't know, a year and a half before I actually finished the series. So I just told him, I said, well, I'll let this personal project run its course and I'll get back to you when it's done. And if you still want to do a book when it's done, let's do it. So I finished up the series, and then it kind of ran its course, and I called him back and he was still wanted to do it. So we put the book together.
That's amazing. I generally don't get starstruck, but Scott Robertson is the one of the guys that when I was really going deep into perspective, he's the dude when it comes to perspective.
That guy can draw, that's for sure. Yeah. He's a super nice guy too. He's just, I mean, when I did the book, he gave you so much creative freedom, like I was expecting not to be a battle, but when you go into a project like that, there's different, people have different approaches or different perspectives, but he just said, do whatever you like, and I put together the book myself, and they were happy with it. And so it was super easy. And like I said, he's a super nice guy. So yeah, it went pretty well.
So you did everything, right? From like the layout and all that, or
yeah, I did like the layout and everything. They have a designer at Design Studio Press that does some of the books. I mean, Scott's kind of philosophy was, you can have as much or as little input on the book as you want. Like if I wanted to, I could have just sent them all the images and the text and everything, and they would have put it all together, or it could have been a collaborative thing. But because it was all the pieces in that book were, very personal to me, I kind of considered the book to be the kind of last piece in the series. And so I wanted to do as much as I could. And so he just said, yeah, go for it. Just do it. And, I sent them stuff and they were happy with it. And so yeah, it was the whole thing from start to finish.
Oh, it's so great. So what's next then? I know you have some sculptures that you're working on.
Yeah, well, there's a company called Industria Mechanica that makes model kits based off some of my personal work. We've done, I guess, 4 already. One large 1/6 kit that has been around for a couple years and is quite popular. And then we have 3 other 1/8 scale kits available as well. So yeah, the big 1/6 one is a male figure, and it's been extremely popular. So we're going to right now we're kind of starting on doing a feminine companion piece to go with it. So I'm just finishing up the design work for that. And Gene Campbell, who's a Vancouver-based modeler, he does all the sculpting. So he's started sculpting away. And so, yeah, that's in the pipe. And hopefully we'll be ready for sale next year, hopefully.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's cool to see your work go from a two-dimensional thing to a fully, cast resin sculpture. And those guys do great work. Industria Mechanica is just, it's all top-notch quality, and they're garage kits, so it's like fairly small runs, but the quality level is really high, and they just do a great job. Between them and Gene doing the sculpting, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of marveling at all the different things that you've done, and also at how laid back and relaxed you sound with all this stuff. Like if it was me, I would be really excited, and I don't know, it always comes through my voice. It's like, yeah, you're just doing these things and one at a time and getting them done, and the next thing, and I'm sure there'll be many more cool things coming. Has it always been like that, or do you think it's for where you're at in your career that you've done so many different things that now it's just you just create and that's it, and there's not sort of these like sugar highs of, oh, we just released this new thing, it's so amazing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's partly just my personality, Mitch. I'm a pretty laid back guy. So yeah, I mean, I do get excited about the stuff, and I do get excited about the creating, but that's the thing I enjoy most is the hands-on doing it. Like the actual creation of say the design for a model kit, or the pieces that go in the book, and the stuff that comes afterwards, whether it gets packaged as a book or a model kit or a snowboard or whatever it happens to be. I think that's very cool, and I do get excited about it. But for me, the most enjoyable thing is the actual sitting down and creating it. So that's where I get the most excitement out of this stuff, and that's just what I do. I mean, I tend to just kind of follow my own path and do the things I want to do, and the stuff that comes afterwards is all kind of just gravy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, or at least to me it makes sense. And I think it's really, what's the right way to say this? It's not detachment, but like you love the creative part, and then it's like you let it go and you let it into the world, and it will be what it will be.
Exactly.
And I think that attitude is so healthy versus being so attached to the project and having so much of yourself wrapped up in it. It's like, I feel like for you, you've done your part and then you let it go, and then it's the next project. And that's something that I couldn't realize when I was younger and working in a studio myself. There was always so much attachment, and it was like a fight many times.
Sure. Yeah, it's the. Certainly when you're on a project, you want to contribute the best you can, and you want to see that project do as well as you can, and you have to. That requires a lot of input and energy, but in a team environment or a studio environment, you also have to trust your other colleagues and trust their abilities and their strengths and their skills. And, that's kind of the attitude I have with, again, some of this stuff, and part of it is having the right people and having people that you enjoy working with and people that you trust their abilities. And so, again, with the model kits, after I do my design work, I'm passing it off to Gene, and he's modeling, he's just an amazing guy. I trust I know he's going to do, not only is he better at what he does than what I could do, I just know that he's the kind of guy that will do a good job with it and pour as much energy and excitement into it as I would. And then that gets passed off to the guy who does the printing, who also has that same philosophy. And then it gets passed off to Mike, the guy that runs Industria Mechanica, and he has the same philosophy, and it's just, if you're working with the right people and you've got a good team, you have to trust that they're going to do, it by your work, if that makes sense as well.
No, it completely makes sense.
But and that's the same with, all this, when my work was put on snowboards, it's like the company that was doing that was, a company that was known for their quality, so it's like, yeah, they're going to do a good job with it, so yeah, it's maybe my laid back approach is knowing that I have that support structure,
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have to let go of it, right? So
yeah, but okay, so for me, I've never looked at it or thought about it that way, but obviously having the right people is tried and tested advice, things that I've heard before. But just getting to that point where like you're 100%, there's no doubt at all that person is going, just what you said, put the love, attention, and excitement into the project that you would yourself, and they're like a specialist at that thing that they do, and you can rest easy. I feel like for a lot of projects, that's been, for me personally, like what I can relate to, that's been the missing component, that I didn't trust people. And I don't know if that was youth or what it was, inexperience.
Yeah.
But I'm going to spend some time thinking about that. So thank you for that takeaway for me personally.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. I mean, the kind of the linchpin there is that, you have to find the right people, and that can be hard, right? And in your situation, and I've worked in the studio environment for years as well, and it's really hard it can be very difficult to find people like that, so I think it's a real special thing when you have, a group like that, and it's kind of like the stars align to kind of make that happen, or you have, the right person that puts that team together. So it's or the right people that can get that out of a team of people. It's a rare thing,
Definitely. Well, I think that's it for my questions. We like to keep these short and sweet. Sure. Any last words before we wrap up? And definitely want to make sure that we give a shout out to any URLs that you want people to visit.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. It's always great to talk about this stuff, and I appreciate your interest. And if people want to see more of my work, they can go to my own website, which is borninconcrete.com, or just throw Derek Stenning into Google, and that'll come up. Other than that, things that are on the plate with me, like I said, we got another model kit on the go. One of my clients, Anki, has the project that we were working on, which is these new trucks and stuff for their project. Anki Overdrive comes out next month, so they can check out Anki. And hopefully I'll have also a new personal project in the works maybe sometime next year. So wait for that.
Yeah, well, when you have it ready to go, the new personal project, please do let us know so we can help get it out to as many people as possible. So I'm sure there's tons of fans who would love to see the new stuff you're working on.
For sure.
And that's it for us. And as usual, we'll have show notes at pencilkings.com/podcast, where you can get the links if you miss those, or you're too lazy to type. If you just want to click a button, we'll have that for you. So thanks for listening, and thank you so much, Derek. It was enlightening for me, and I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks again, man. Have a good one.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.